Okay, so let us start for today's class now. So our focus of today's lesson, we're going to look at this transport of water, how this transportation of water and in general pathway of water, how the water actually can be absorbed at the root hair cells there all the way to the atmosphere. Okay, so first of all, you can see that in these diagrams, okay, it's a summary of the pathway. So generally, we do know that the water, okay, the directions will be from the soil, enter into the root hair cell, you see that, and then across or along this what we call the cortical cells, and then endodermal cells, go into a pericycle, and then enter into the xylem, transport all the way up. Can you see that? And then go to the mesophyll cell, substomata cavity to the atmosphere. So I label here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just for labeling. It's not for the what we call this the process that we're going to describe later. Because if you look at how the movement of the water, it must from the soil all the way to the atmosphere. Correct or not? Okay. So but the labeling here is just show you what are the process. For example, in this case, number 1 indicates that from the leaf to the environment, from the leaf to the environment. And then number 2 is from the xylem vessel to the leaf, means the mesophyll cells, and then along the xylem vessel elements. Then number 4 from the root hair cells all the way enter into the xylem, and last from the soil to the roots. So this is means the label. Okay, so here we have 3 things you need to understand for this diagram. Okay, so because I can't get a better diagram, this is the diagram I can get. So with the label 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't want to change it. So first of all, you have to know the directions always from the soil to the atmosphere. So it means that the directions will be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so write down direction. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Are you clear? This is the directions movement. Okay, so now, but in terms of explanation, later, I will start with 1, then number 2, then number 5, number 4, and then only number 3. Then you can see the whole story. Okay, so if the question asks you to describe the directions, then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If the question asks you to explain, then it will be 1, 2, 5, 4, 3. Clear or not, guys? Okay, so you have to understand. So question asks you if how means 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, water molecule enter and blah blah blah. Okay, so what are the forces? What are the forces actually cause the movement of the water molecule? Depend on 2 forces here. So what are these 2 forces? So first of all is the water potential gradient. Water potential. So we do know that at the atmosphere, constantly there is wind, correct or not? So the blow, that means the wind will carry away the water vapor. So making the water potential here is lower. Okay, but substomata cavity water potential is higher. So when the stomata open, you can see that the water vapor diffuse out. This is a transpiration. So because of the water molecule evaporate and then diffuse out, so in the mesophyll cell, water potential is low now. Correct or not? Are you clear? So water potential in the mesophyll cell is low compared to the xylem. Okay, in any moment, we always compare 2. So this time I compare atmosphere and the substomatal cavity. So atmosphere, low, substomatal cavity, high, diffusion take place. Now I compare where? Because of the water molecule evaporated out, right? So it means that the mesophyll cell compared to the xylem, definitely xylem will have higher water potential, here lower water potential. So it means that from here you will have the very steep water potential gradient. Are you clear? We have very steep water potential gradient. So this water potential gradient, you can see that, okay, cause the water molecule to move from the xylem vessel element all the way to the mesophyll cell. So it means that pathway number 1 and pathway number 2, guys, pathway number 1 and pathway number 2 depends on the water potential gradient. Are you clear? Water potential gradient. So high to low. Okay, so now if you look at this thing, because of water potential in the mesophyll cell is low, water potential inside the xylem vessel element is high, so water molecule continuously move into the mesophyll cells. So we have another type of pressure here is termed as the hydrostatic pressure. Or I put it here, HP. So this hydrostatic pressure actually depends on the volume of liquids. If the volume of liquid is high, then hydrostatic pressure is high. Are you clear in general? Okay, so it means that if we have the high volume of the solutions, then you can see that the hydrostatic pressure will be high. Okay, so now what happened here is because of transpiration, water molecule constantly move from the xylem into the mesophyll cell. So it means that we remove the water molecule at the top part of the vessel. So if we have the water molecule continues to move, from the xylem into the vessel, so it means that at this part here, volume decrease. So hydrostatic pressure decrease. Are you clear? Can I see that at the top part? Okay, so we are done with the explanations. But next, you can see that, okay, number 5 and number 4, water molecule constantly move because of soil particle here, okay, water potential is high. Xylem here, water potential is low. Okay, so in this case, water molecule constantly will move. Can you see that absorb the water all the way into the xylem? So means that if you look at this part, because of water molecule enter, hydrostatic pressure now is high. Correct or not? Because accumulations of the water. So when hydrostatic pressure is high, hydrostatic pressure is low, so it creates the hydrostatic pressure gradient. Are you clear? So these hydrostatic pressure gradients cause the water molecule to move up the column by the process known as mass flow. Okay, so this is the summary for the entire process. Okay, so now remove the here. So if you look at this, number 4 and number 5 also depend on water potential, but number 3 cannot depend on water potential, because if you depend on water potential only, the process will be very, very slow. Are you clear? Okay, so but in fact, if you check the rate of the movement is very, very high. Are you clear? So this one actually depends on the hydrostatic pressure gradient. So the interplay between these two, not interplay, basically contribution from these two kind of the pressure, water potential and also the hydrostatic pressure. Therefore, we will be able to get the water molecule to move from the soil all the way to the atmosphere. So during this process, they bring together with the mineral ions and also dissolved particle. Okay, and also evaporation give the plants the evaporative cooling effect. So as I said just now, the movement of water molecule highlight here passive. So the idea passive here is not passive transport, but passive basically means that the process, the entire process does not require, okay, write down ATP. Can you see that the entire process is because of the transpiration pool and totally depend on these two kind of pressure, water potential and hydrostatic pressure. Okay, so for the explanations, I'm going to draw the diagrams later using another app, but here I'm going to talk about it. As I say that in terms of explanations, I will use 1, 2, 5, 4, 3. Are you clear? So means make sure that you know what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm not going to follow, because if I follow, it doesn't make sense. Okay, when we talk about explanations. Okay, so I will stop recording for a while. I'll use another app to show you guys the drawing. Okay, okay, so the first part 1. So what is the part 1? Part 1, we're going to look at it, the movement of water molecule from the leaf, okay, to the atmosphere. This is part 1. We're going to talk about it now. Okay, so let me draw out the tissues here. First of all, we do have this xylem vessel element. Okay, so xylem vessel elements, thin wall, primary cell wall, thin primary cell wall. And then we do know that they are lignified, right? Xylem vessel element, they are lignified. So you may have some parts of the cells, okay, without the lignifications, forming the pits, okay. So label, this one is the xylem vessel element. Okay, so side by side with the xylem vessel elements, you have these mesophyll cells. So mesophyll cell, again, irregular shape. So we have thin cell wall here, thin cell wall also. Okay. Then another mesophyll cells. Don't worry about these guys. You can draw it. Okay, you can take a snapshot later. Okay. So because of the loosely packed mesophyll cells, or spongy mesophyll, so it created this what we call the air spaces, or we call it a substomatal cavity. Okay. So now we do have the lower epidermal cells. Okay, then we do have the gut cell. Okay, gut cell. Okay, then we do have the epidermal cell. Okay, so I label here, this one is the substomatal cavity. Okay, this one is the epidermal cells. Okay, and this is the gut cell. And then we do have the stoma. Okay, so now how the process, the movement of water from the leaf to the atmosphere. Okay, so generally we need to know that because of spongy mesophyll cells at the cell wall of the spongy mesophyll, so the water molecule actually evaporate. So this is process number one. So what is the process number one? So look at the process number one is because of the evaporation. Okay, so what actually happened during this evaporation process? So the liquid water, okay, molecule or water evaporate. Okay, from where? From the cell wall of the mesophyll cell. Are you clear? So the very important means the words here you have to use cell wall. Are you clear? So I highlight here cell wall because they cannot evaporate from the, okay, it cannot evaporate, okay? It cannot evaporate from the cytoplasm. So whatever I draw here, you can see that it's from the cell wall. Okay, so this is evaporation. Okay, so evaporations then means that the liquid water now becomes the water vapor, evaporate to form water vapor. So this is the second terms that you need to, I need to highlight here, the word, correct words. So this water vapor going to saturate, oh, correct, sorry. So therefore the substomatal cavity now is saturated with water vapor. Okay, so general idea here means that water potential, okay, at the substomatal cavity is high. Are you clear? Okay, so water potential at the substomatal cavity now is high because of accumulations of the water vapor. Okay, so now second, when the gut cells here, these two gut cells open the stomata, then you can see that this water vapor now can move out from the substomatal cavity to the atmosphere. Can you see that? Okay, so this is process number 2. So what's the process number 2? So the process number 2, we can see that it's a diffusion. Are you clear? So because during the photosynthesis, then you can see that the gut cells open the stomata. So when the gut cell open the stomata, then you can to allow the gas exchange to take place, then water vapor now diffuse out. So what you explain here, or what you talk about is, so water vapor diffuse or move out. Okay, move from where to where? From substomatal cavity to the atmosphere. Okay, so by which process? By diffusion. Why diffusion? Because no membrane involved. Okay, down the water potential gradient. Why move out, not move in? Why move out, not move in? This is due to what? Due to the wind. At the atmosphere there. So what happened? This wind actually, this wind carries away the water vapor at the atmosphere, correct or not? Can you see that? So therefore, water potential of the atmosphere actually is low. Okay, so due to this, therefore, water vapor move from the substomatal cavity to the atmosphere by diffusion. So again, highlight the word is water vapor, not water, and also by the process of diffusion, not water. Not osmosis, because no involvement of the no involvement of these membranes. Okay, so in this case, you can see that now water molecule move from the cell wall all the way to the atmosphere. Okay, so this process is termed as the overall effect. We term it as the stomatal transpiration. Can I see that? It's just due to these transpirations effects. Okay, so now generally, okay, if you rank the water potential, so in terms of the water potential, ranking from high to low, high water potential to low water potential. So rank number 1, the highest will be xylem vessel element. Okay, followed by the cytoplasm. Okay, cytoplasm of mesophyll cell. Okay, and continue to the cell wall of mesophyll cell, and then substomatal cavity, and then last atmosphere. Okay, so we do know that just now. Okay, so in this case, you can see that decrease in terms of the water potential. This one is the highest, this one is the lowest. So therefore, the movements, you can see that if we are from high to low, okay, down the water potential gradient. So therefore, just now you can see that from the substomatal cavity to the atmosphere by the diffusions of the water vapor. Can you see that? From the cell wall to the substomatal cavity is because of the evaporation. Okay, so the next part of the topics we're going to talk about will be this. water molecule, how the water molecule move from the xylem to the cytoplasm or xylem to the cell wall of the mesophyll cells or cytoplasm to the cell wall. So again, the process now down the water potential gradient. Are you clear? So this one, okay, so part one, we talk about this, right? Diffusion. Part one, we talk about evaporation. So now we look at part two. Part two, we talk about these processes. How the water molecule actually move from xylem vessel element, okay, into the cytoplasm of the mesophyll cells or cell wall of the mesophyll cells. Okay, so let us look at this part two. So part two, from xylem vessel element to mesophyll cell. So it can be the cytoplasm, can be vacuole, can be cell wall. So we're going to look at these three processes. Okay. So again, let me draw out the structure again. So again, we do have the xylem vessel element. So xylem vessel elements, they are primary cell wall very thin. They are dead cells, okay, with hollow, okay, without any cytoplasm and nucleus. But they do have the lignifications. Okay, so incomplete lignification form the pits, granite. Okay, so I label this is xylem vessel element. Okay, so we have lignin primary cell wall and secondary cell wall. So beside this, the cells, okay, beside the cells, you can see the mesophyll cell. Okay, irregular shape mesophyll cell with the cell wall. So just now we didn't focus, I didn't draw the vacuole. So they have the very large vacuole. Okay, mesophyll cell have the large vacuole. And between the, we have another mesophyll cell, irregular shape. Yeah, irregular shape. So they are loosely packed. So they also have the vacuole. So between two cells, they might have the plasmodesmata. So understand the structure between the plasmodesmata and also the pits. So let me label this is the pits. Okay, this one is the plasmodesma. Okay, so generally because we do know that because of the lignifications here, okay, because of the lignin actually impermeable to water molecule. Are you clear? So the only way for water molecule to move out from the xylem vessel element, so the water molecule move now, see carefully, they have to enter into the mesophyll cells through the pits. So they will enter, okay, first they can enter into the cytoplasm or they can enter into the cell wall. So from cell wall, they continue to move within the cell wall. Are you clear? Can you see that? It can move within the cell wall. So the one that enter into the cytoplasm can also may enter into the vacuole and then move out a vacuole, and then they can cross the plasmodesmata, enter into the vacuole, move out the vacuole, and then enter into the cell wall. It depends on the water potential gradients. Are you clear? Okay. Or you may say that this water molecule never enter into, they didn't enter into the vacuole, but they continue to move within the the cytoplasm across a space. Can you see that? Continue to move into the cell wall because evaporation have to take place at the cell wall. So the final destination here always cell wall. Can I see that? So in this case, I'm going to label 4 pathways here. Okay, so the first pathway from the xylem into the mesophyll cells. Second pathway within the cell wall. Third pathway within the cytoplasm. And number 4, enter into the, this is what we call the vacuole. Okay, so we look at what is the first one. So you look at the first one. So first one actually is the movement of water, the H2O move from xylem vessel element into mesophyll cell. Okay, and we do know that because due to the presence, because of lignin, lignin is impermeable to water molecule totally. So therefore, this water molecule have to cross, okay, the pits, okay, down the water potential gradient. Are you clear? So the first process, look at this. So H2O move from the xylem vessel elements into the mesophyll cells due to the presence of lignins which impermeable to water molecule. Therefore, water molecule have to cross the pits down the water potential gradients to the mesophyll cells. Are you clear? So in this case, very, very important is through the pits. Okay, underline the words pits here. It cannot cross the the lignin. So what's number 2? The most important part is number 2. Number 2 is termed as the apoplast pathway. Or some books use the word apoplastic pathway. So apoplast pathway. So what does mean apoplast pathway? So in terms of description of the apoplast pathway, so you can see that water molecule move from cell to cell. Okay, along or within the cell wall. So it means that they move from one cell to another cell along the cell wall. Because along the cell wall, if along the cell wall, do they cross the plasma membrane or not? No, right? So because they don't cross the plasma membrane, so in this mode, so it's by diffusion. Okay, by diffusions, the water molecule actually diffuse along the cell wall or within the cell wall, okay, down the water potential gradient. Are you clear? So again, the process is by diffusion. Why? Along the cell wall, you look at number 2, along the cell wall basically means that there is no involvement of the phospholipids bilayer or selectively permeable membrane. So it means that the movement of water molecule is by diffusion. How about number 3 and number 4? I'll put it together, number 3 and number 4. Number 3, okay, you can see that. Number 3, along, okay, or within the cytoplasm. So number 3 actually is termed as a symplast pathway, or some books use the word symplastic pathway. That means no problem for you guys to use the symplast or symplastic pathway. And number 4, what's number 4? Number 4 actually is a vacuolar pathway. Okay, but in our syllabus, it depends. You can actually merge both of them when come to the description. You don't want to separate them, okay? Or you want to separate them into symplast and vacuolar pathway, it doesn't matter. So minimum, you can actually merge both of them together and give them one term called symplast pathway. Are you clear? We can merge them together and just describe it as symplast pathway. So this symplast pathway actually it totally depends on these 2 roads. or two pathway. So whether membrane involved or not, if involved membrane, what kind of membrane they involve? For example, involve the cell surface membrane or plasma membrane, or involve the tonoplast, like vacuolar pathway. Vacuolar pathway will involve tonoplast, correct or not? If the cells, from the cell wall, enter into the cytoplasm, definitely involve plasma membrane. So if like this, then the process highlight here is by osmosis down the water potential gradient. If membrane involved, if no membrane involved, for example, within cytoplasm or across the plasmodesmata, because open pore, right? So this process is by diffusion. But no matter which way, osmosis of diffusion, we do know that they must down the water potential gradient. Are you clear? Okay, so no matter which way, you will down the water potential gradient until they reach where? They reach the cell wall, because cell wall has lower water potential compared to the xylem vessel element. So that's why the net effect, you can see that water molecule now move to the cell wall, evaporation take place. So to describe the process, okay, to describe how the thing actually moves or describe the process. So first marking point, we say that water molecule move, describe how, right? You don't need to explain, okay? Move from where to where? Move from xylem vessel element, okay, to where? From where to where? To mesophyll cell. It can be the cell wall, it can be the cytoplasm, okay? Mesophyll cells. Okay, so by what process? In this case, a bit difficult because it moves to the cell wall is by diffusion, it moves to the cytoplasm is by the osmosis. So we don't make ourselves confused. We just say that water molecule move from xylem vessel element to the mesophyll cells across the pit. Okay, down the water potential gradient. Okay, so I highlight why we don't talk about it, because we're confused. Because if let's say they move into the cytoplasm, then it will involve osmosis. Okay, why we don't talk? Okay, if they move directly into the cell wall, then it's by diffusion. Are you clear? Okay, so number two. So water molecule move after that, move from cell to cells, from mesophyll cell to another mesophyll cell. So I put it simple, from cell to cells to another cells by either apoplast, okay, or simplast pathway in general. Okay, you have to write this. Okay, so water molecule now move from cell to cells after they come out, right, from vessel elements. So from mesophyll cell to mesophyll cells by either apoplast or simplast pathway. Next, we explain. So in apoplast pathway, so water molecule move from one mesophyll cells to another, from one mesophyll cells to another mesophyll cell, or you just say from cell to cells, okay, within, they move from one cell to cell within the cell wall. Okay, by what process? By diffusion. Because cell wall, right? Down the water potential gradient. Can I see that? So I include highlights here. Okay, move from one mesophyll cell to the other cell within the cell wall. Okay, because apoplast pathway, so the process by diffusion, okay, down the water potential gradient. Okay, next, how about in simplest pathway? So either you separate it or in general minimum you write this way. So in simplest pathway, so same thing, water molecule move from one mesophyll cell to another cell. So or you write in from cells to cells. Okay, so it can be within, sorry, cell to cell, within the cytoplasm. So put a bracket, if within the cytoplasm, by what? By diffusion. Or within the cytoplasm, or across plasmodesmata. So across plasmodesmata, again by diffusion, because no membrane involved, or enter into vacuole. Okay, in this case by osmosis. So I combine everything. Can you see that? By osmosis, down the water potential gradient. Are you clear? So you can see that here, cytoplasm, diffusion, because no membrane involved. Plasmodesmata, diffusion. Okay, vacuole, vacuolar pathway, osmosis. So against down the water potential gradient. So these are the requirement minimum that you describe it for your answer. Okay. So come back to this diagram. What we're going to focus now is this. Okay, I use the black color. So if you look at the xylem vessel element, so what should happen to the xylem vessel element? So because the movement of water molecule from xylem vessel element to mesophyll cells, correct or not? Due to this process, what actually happened? This process actually caused the decrease in the volumes of the fluid. Correct or not? When decrease the volume, it will cause the decrease in hydrostatic pressure. Okay, so means that now xylem vessel elements, or more precisely, okay, at the shoots, at the leaf there. Okay, so because of the movement of a water molecule from the xylem vessel elements to the mesophyll cells, lower down the volume of the fluid inside the xylem vessel element, so therefore decrease the hydrostatic pressure. Okay, so again, this is the one that we are going to look at it later when we look at this, how water molecule move along the xylem vessel elements later. Okay. So we do know that, okay, from the leaf to the environment, this one very, very important due to the photosynthesis. Then we have the opening of the stomata, allow the water vapor to diffuse out from the substomata cavity. And how do you have a water? Why we have the water vapor in the substomata cavity is because of the evaporation. So due to evaporation, now substomata cavity are saturated with the water vapor, and this water vapor now diffuses out of from the leaf to the atmosphere, again down the water potential gradient. Okay, so means that now mesophyll cells have lower water potential compared to the xylem vessel element. So as water evaporates from the wall of the mesophyll cells, more water molecule is drawn into the mesophyll cell from the xylem vessel, so that to replace the water loss. So the process, the movement of water molecule through the cells, okay, in the leaf, particularly mesophyll cells, the process again is a passive process down the water potential gradients by these two processes, apoplastic and symplastic pathway. Okay, so symplastic pathway also includes the vacuolar pathway. So apoplastic pathway, very clear cut. It must be cell wall to cell wall. Symplastic pathway, so it will involve the cytoplasm or vacuole or even the plasmodesmata. So in this case, cell wall to cell wall again by diffusion. Cytoplasm again by diffusion. Vacuole because involve the tonoplast, so osmosis. And plasmodesmata because no involvement of membranes, so diffusions again. Okay, but overall you can see that they still down the water potential gradient. Okay, so let us compare between these two, apoplastic and symplastic pathway, based on the descriptions here, number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. If you look at number 1, it basically from the pit enter into the cell wall, right? From the pit enter into the cell wall. So therefore, number 1 is water molecule now enter the cell wall by diffusion because no membrane. Okay, so apoplastic pathway, always remember along the cell wall. So along the cell wall, against by diffusion. So water molecule now again move within the cell wall by diffusion. Number 3, so occasionally you may have the intercellular space. Can you see that intercellular space? So this intercellular space allows the water molecule to move, enter into the intercellular space and then come out again. So this one we say that water molecule may move from the cell wall to cell wall by diffusion again through the intercellular space. Can you see that? Because they never cross the cell surface membrane. And number 4, from one cell to another cell again through the cell wall. Okay, so again, because no involvement of the cell surface membranes, so therefore the process again by diffusion. Okay, so as contrast to the symplastic pathway, you can see number one here from the cell wall enter into the cytoplasm, means that they're going to go through this cell membrane. So the process is by osmosis. Water molecule enter the cytoplasm by osmosis through the cell surface membrane, so osmosis. And number 2, can you see that enter into the vacuolar pathway, so across the tonoplast, so therefore osmosis again, right? Water molecule may move into the sap in the vacuole through the tonoplast again by osmosis. Number 3, you can see number 3 across the plasmodesmata, so plasmodesmata, no involvement of the membranes, so therefore the process by diffusion. Are you clear? And number 4, you can see that it can cross the cell wall. Now the cross of the cell wall here, you realize that they will enter across the, can you see that? Across the cell membrane, right? Across the cell membrane. So because of this, across cell membrane, can you see that? So therefore, it's a form of osmosis. But if I when I put it here, I put in more detail. Water molecule may move from the cell to cell through the adjacent cell surface membrane and cell wall by osmosis and diffusion respectively. So students a bit confused. Osmosis or diffusion. So it depends on how you describe it. So let us look at this. If this is the plant cell, so we have the plant cell wall. Okay, and then we do have a layer of the cell surface membrane. Not ephthalgic, okay, cell surface membrane. Okay, so it depends on which process you mentioned. If the water molecule enter into the cell wall like this process is by osmosis. Osmosis, by diffusion. Sorry, my bad. Then from the cell wall enter into the cytoplasm, in this case is by osmosis. Are you clear? So if I continue to draw, if this is the vacuole, then if the water molecule now move into the vacuole, okay, it cross the tonoplast, so again by osmosis. But if the water molecule move within the cytoplasm, So this one by diffusion. So it depends on what you actually described. Are you clear? Okay. So overall process is summarized in this diagram. But one thing that every year student will confuse and ask me the same question. Because of the arrow here, I can't get a better diagram as I say that. Be careful, the evaporations always take place from the cell wall. So this arrow a little bit wrong here when talk about evaporation. Can you see that? Evaporation. And evaporation cannot start from the cytoplasm. Okay, cannot start from cytoplasm. So what I want you guys to change it now, perhaps use a black arrow. Okay. Just to cancel this part. Okay, so it means that leave the green arrow from the cell wall because evaporations must take place from the cell wall. Okay, so you can see the summarize here. So across the vacuole, vacuolar pathway within the cytoplasm, so within the cell wall, so apoplastic pathway. So within the cytoplasm and cross the plasmodesmata in this case. So it's a symplastic pathway. As we do know that these two we can combine and say as a symplastics. Okay. So with this, I have done for the first part of the lesson.